The piece behind me is called The First Time the Heart, a portrait of life. And it's a series of 50 prints. There are 18 in the show with Amon Carter. And the print series is based on the birth of cardiology, the first time humans were able to record the movements of their hearts outside of their bodies. And it's a moment that seems so dry, medically dry in some way, but as an artist, I'm arguing that this is part of the incredible lineage of a bigger question, which is, how do we know and give our hearts to each other? You know, when you rephrase it that way, it becomes very poetic, and we understand that. And it has a philosophical or religious and a poetic entry point. Medicine largely didn't get involved until they could crack this problem, which was, how do they know someone's heart without cutting into them, without killing the patient in the process? So this piece behind me to the left is in fact the birth, the very first time a human saw their heart beating in real time outside of their body. This is the day, an iconic image of modern civilization, the pulse wave. This is the first time somebody saw it. And not just saw it, but invented the concept. I like to call this the Hubble telescope moment of the heart. This was such a radical leap in resolution technology into what had, for millennia, been an invisible box behind our chest. And the two materials that allowed for the breakthrough are one, a single human hair that the scientist plucked from his head. He cuts it down to make a little stylus and rigs a device so that every time his heart beat or his pulse moved, it sent compressed air down a tube and made his own hair bounce in synchronicity with his heart. Then the problem was, how do you store that image? And here's the second incredible material breakthrough. He coated a piece of paper with soot from a candle flame. This is 1853, by the way. And then his next breakthrough was to use his own hair, now in synchronicity with his heart, to carve an image of his pulse wave into that soot-covered paper. And this is incredible. I mean, as an artist, this checks every box as far as what I would hope between materials and poetry and a leap in insight into humanity, which is, how do we know each other's hearts? And who knew the answer would be hair and soot from a candle flame from 1853. And yet here it is, and that is the first time. That is the beginning of modern cardiology. So the portfolio certainly tells the story of the technology, but it's more. Each of these prints, I give myself a criteria. Can I find the first time the heart was recorded under various conditions of life, emotions, to having a glass of hot milk? In the room, there's the first time somebody's heart was recorded while they were smelling lavender. There's the first time somebody's heart was recorded while they ate chocolate. Just the mundane, trivial aspects of life, all the way to something like the first time somebody's heart was recorded while they were experiencing religious guilt. This is the birth of not just that we can image the heart, but can we ask that core question that I'm arguing Anne is asking off planet, which is, are we in our signals? And what depth of nuance can we expect to pull out of that signal? Does religious guilt actually exist as an undulating line vibrating through your chest wall? That is a weird and profound question. We can debate if it's true or not, but again, back to Anne, she's hoping that's true. If we want the memory of humanity in all of its nuance to actually survive the death of the planet. The challenge was, how do you make an image, a permanent image in soot from a candle flame? The process we came up with is to essentially print with an invisible ink on the page the waveform and the text. This is simply there to give us a resist that we would need later. Second, I trained myself for a long time on how to draw with a candle flame. And I sooted each of these pieces of paper with a candle. learning how the gestures of my wrist and how long I might hold the flame in a spot would give me all of the rich tonal variation that you see. Third, I found one of the scientists from the 19th century had left his recipe behind on how he had tried to tackle a similar problem. And essentially, like a photographic process, you dip the soot-coated paper in a liquid bath made of shellac and some other chemicals. And like a photograph, all of these rich hues came out. And then fourth, the final, maybe the most tedious process, which was to honor again the way they were made with hair, was I made my own paintbrushes with individual hairs and excavated out of the soot the waveform in the text, which the invisible ink was still there to give me a little hint of where I should follow along. So I really think of them as almost an archaeological process because I am dusting away matter and dust to reveal an ancient document. A final stipulation for this project is that every time it's exhibited, I invite somebody new to what I call resequence them. As I mentioned, in total there are 50, and although they're driven by an image, they're also driven by the language that the physician originally used to document the experiment. But this language is so strange and evocative, and one of my favorite things about science is when it's accidentally poetic just by being specific. And there's this way of just going further down where it just gets weird again. For example, in the room, there's, young woman, 24, much debilitated by the cares of a large household and the entertainment of guests. Like, what an odd thing for a physician to write as a scientific experiment. These are also wonderful snapshots into all kinds of cultural, gender, political moments through time. But that language is another way for them to be resequenced. And my argument is that if you just wanted to approach this as a long-form poem, you could just take each of those 50 descriptions and write an amazing narrative of a human living their life. I did it the first time, and every time since, I've asked someone else to take over. So what you're looking at is John Herrington's resequencing. The first indigenous astronaut. It's probably not a surprise. I've always wanted to work with an astronaut, so I am very fortunate to be able to do that. And the point of asking different people to do that is, of course, they're going to bring their life experiences to the resequencing process. And that's what I want. I want to tease out other hidden meanings that even I can't see. We will all approach this differently. In our discussions talking with him, he did mention that NASA records his heart while he's in orbit, as they do for all astronauts. And so, again, in the rarefied category of human experience, how does one live the rest of their life knowing that their heart has beat in outer space? That's something I don't know, and John does. And again, I hope that somehow trickled through the way he's resequenced these. And it's not a heart at the edge of the solar system yet, but it's certainly off planet, and that's really intrigues me. So somewhere between John's heart in low Earth orbit and Anne's heart now at the edge of the solar system is this rarefied experience, human experience of how our hearts behave and what we ask of them in those moments.